Retail workers of Reddit, what was your get the F out experience with a customer? I'm not saying the get the F out part, but my manager on my behalf. I'd recently had a very bad experience in my first paid job, and I quit because I felt so insecure about my appearance and ability in a typical work environment. I have achondroplastic dwarfism, making me 4 feet tall and disproportionate. So instead, I was volunteering in a small town charity shop to gain some confidence again. My manager knew all about this. I was in the back room when this guy comes in and rings the bell. I walk in and he just stares at me, laughs and says, "Is this Santa's workshop?" I just stand there. And my manager, who is at the till, says coldly, "Excuse me?" And the guy looks taken aback. "Sorry, I didn't expect to see someone like that here." They both look at me and I just awkwardly said something like, "Well, I am," and shrugged. And it would have been fine until he then said, "So, do you make the toys?" My manager walked out from behind the counter, pointed to the door, and said flatly, "Do not disrespect my staff. Get out." He started apologizing. Out! He still seemed to find the whole situation hilarious and left. Man, I miss that manager. She was the best. Thank you, Bianca. Yeah, there's a special place down below for bullies like this. What did you expect to come out of that conversation? That's not even something that you would say in jest to a friend that has that condition, let alone a total stranger. Not appropriate, not cool, and simply getting kicked out of a store I don't think was appropriate enough, but I digress. Story 2. I was 18 and worked at a local grocery store in the produce department. Beyond regular duties, we made fruit trays on weekends. Nothing fancy, just a variety of cut up fruit in large red bowls. Dude comes in after 10 p.m. We close at 11 and asks for a tray with specific fruits. I tell him we unfortunately don't make custom trays. The 16-year-old dude, who is also on shift with me, overhears and tells him it's slower tonight so he can do it for him. He says, "Okay, good." No gratefulness displayed at all. This coworker of mine is legit always extra kind to customers. It's legitimately admirable. 20 minutes later, my coworker comes out of the back room and presents it to this customer. He immediately starts screaming at him about how bad it looks. He yells things like, "That looks like absolute crap! For you an idiot?" I run over to see what the problem is. The fruit tray looks absolutely standard, but this guy isn't having it. He smashes it on the ground and keeps screaming about how we're retarded and how we've wasted his time. I snap. I tell him to get the F out. He postures up. Keep in mind, this guy is like in his 40s, ready to fight some teenagers over a fruit tray. Numerous other employees run over and yell for him to get out. He says, "I'll be back for all you retards," and runs toward and out of the sliding doors. All this is on camera, luckily, so management calls the cops regarding his actions and that last threat. They ended up arresting him later on because apparently he also had some warrants. Hope the fruit was worth it, a-hole. Story 3. When I worked in the tool department at Sears, a guy wanted to get a replacement on his tape measure. I couldn't replace it because it was the tape that was effed up due to the guy mistreating it and not caring because Sears will replace it for free. Dude threatened to go out to his truck and get his gun, come back in and shoot you, points at me, you, points at my manager who had taken over already, and you, points at my coworker who was standing nearby. I gave him the "why haven't you done it yet" look and left. I worked at Sears. I was ready to die. Story 4. 2 women came into the store screaming at each other. As I'm coming out from the back, I gather from the yelling that one had hit the other's car. Nearly, but no actual incident had occurred. It was a busy Saturday. People are starting to stare. I'm trying to gather my wits, thinking how best to handle it, when my manager came flying in from nowhere. She just yells, "Either come in here and shop like people, or go outside with the rest of the animals." One left, one stayed. Story 5. I worked in a T-Mobile store. A lady comes in screaming about how she bought a phone the previous day, didn't buy insurance, and dropped it in a pool. She was demanding I give her a new phone for free, but she wasn't even our customer. She was a Verizon customer. She screamed at me for about 10 minutes, demanding I call our manager. She then started yelling at other customers about how awful we were. Called the cops. Story 7. I worked at a pawn shop for a couple years. We had a customer pawn a chainsaw, which turned up stolen and was confiscated by police, which causes the store to lose money and police to be aware that he is a known thief. He came back something close to 3 months later to pawn something else. I didn't recognize him right away. I asked him if he had pawned anything before, and he said yes. So I asked his name and entered it into our computer system, which promptly said, "Stolen." First I thought, really? You came back here? I gave my boss, it's literally a 2-person store, our not very frequently used signal to discreetly call the police. Meanwhile, I started acting like I was working on his loan and stalled a bit. Just a couple minutes later, a couple police cars pulled up and officers quietly walked in, and he immediately gave up. I didn't really have anything to say to him. The handcuffs spoke for themselves. Story 8. I worked at McDonald's in 1997, and we had Beanie Babies as Happy Meal toys at one point. It was insane. They literally had to buy a security cage to keep the toys locked down in the back. They were delivered with a security escort. People were ordering 100 Happy Meals with no food because we couldn't sell the toys by themselves. One day, I heard a commotion up front and found my high school counselor reaching across the counter, grabbing one of the owners by the shirt because we were out of the pink flamingo. I'll never forget the look in her eyes. She had to be dragged out. It's scary how easy it can be to work people up into a frenzy. Imagine being one of those people in the late 90s that just invested heavy stocks into the Beanie Baby business, thinking that you were going to make it big one day. And yeah, that didn't really happen, did it? So you should have at least gotten some food to go with your Happy Meal, because that's worth more than a Beanie Baby nowadays. Story 9. When the old guy I was serving kept looking at my chest and making creepy facial expressions, I asked him if he wanted a drink or he was just going to keep staring. He excitedly put his hands out and went, "Oh, I can do more than stare," and tried to walk behind the bar to grab my chest. I told him to get the F out, to which he seemed very shocked and outraged, so I just started to loudly shout back to him, "Sir, please do not try to grope my chest. You need to leave," over and over, until the rest of the bar was staring and he was panically whispering for me to please be quiet. So the wife I didn't know he came with wouldn't hear him. Can only imagine the argument that unfolded while she was dragging him out. Story 10. I worked at a ski resort when I was younger, fitting boots and sizing skis, etc. A ski rental shop. My first year I worked at basically the Walmart of rentals, the cheapest option and the biggest store. So the week of Christmas, there are lines out the door every single day. I remember seeing my 2-week paycheck after the 2 weeks around Christmas, and I worked 119 hours. It was absolute insanity. For another reference, the closest town had a permanent residency of less than 10K people, but during Christmas, it jumped up to 70K people trying to enjoy their vacation in the same spot. So one of these days, it's business as usual. A quarter-mile line out the door, non-stop craziness. I'm at the bench closest to the door, helping a lady when this kid walks up to my bench. I asked if I could help him, and he said he had reserved rentals online and he wanted to pick them up. I said, "This is our store name. If that's where you reserved, you'll need to get in the back of the line and we'll help you as soon as we can." This 13-year-old kid said, "This is effing bullcrap," in front of the customer I was helping. I told him that quite literally every piece of equipment in our store was reserved. Every single person in front of you has a reservation as well, and we have to help everyone. He started insulting me personally, saying I was a stupid female dog and that he was going to report us to anyone he could because we weren't letting him skip hundreds of people doing the exact same thing he was doing. I think what pissed him off more is that I'm 6'3" and big. He was maybe 5 foot something and 120 pounds. So when he called me a stupid female dog, I literally laughed in his face. I was at no point threatened by this child, and at first it was funny. The first lady left. I'm ignore laughing at this kid and asking the next person to come up, and he starts yelling cuss words at me because I'm not helping him. Up until this point, my manager had been a complete dick and I was not a fan of him, but he'd had enough of the Christmas rush as well, and it was a perfect person to let off some steam on. I went and got my manager and told him this kid was personally attacking me and yelling cuss words in front of customers. So he walks up to the kid and says, "I'm sorry for the confusion. What's your name so I can take a look at your reservation?" And the kid lights up, thinking he finally beat the system, and he gets in front of everyone for throwing a female dog fit. My manager goes and finds his reservation. It's digital, but I'm pretty sure he printed it off for the added dramatic effect. Comes back and says, "I found it." He proceeds to rip it in half in front of his face. Don't ever treat someone that's trying to help you like that. You're never allowed in our store again. And with every other store in town also being 100% booked on equipment, good luck skiing this week. I still didn't like the guy, but I respected him 1 point more for the rest of the season for standing up for me. Story 11. I work in a Dutch 24/7 gas station. This German kid, 20 to 25 years old, came in the shop drunk while driving, looked for beer, which we're not allowed to sell, and got all mad that I hid the beers. He wanted to start a fight and he wanted to drive off in his car. That was impossible since I locked the door and alerted the cops. He lost his driver's license and got a huge fine, which he had to pay instantly. What an a-hole. Story 12. I used to work the reception desk at a tattoo shop. I had many GTFO moments, but the one that stands out was a dude coming in with his girlfriend to get his name tattooed on her. She looked terrified, wouldn't make eye contact with me, didn't talk directly to me, and barely spoke. The whole conversation was the dude giving me her license and saying, "She wants my name tattooed on her." I took way more info from both of them than I needed and tried to get the woman to come in the back alone so I could talk to her, but boyfriend wouldn't have it. I eventually went back and got the shop manager, big dude, and told him what was up. I came back to the counter and lied, saying we didn't have walk-ins that day, and dude got pissed. I started yelling. Shop manager came out and physically removed them from the shop. I called the cops and provided all the info I had. Was basically told they couldn't do anything unless it was self-reported. I still think about the woman all the time. Story 13. It couldn't have been more obvious that a guy was trying to return stolen merchandise. He lost the receipt, didn't know when it was purchased, paid with cash so we couldn't just easily look up the transaction on a credit card. He said he would call his friend to ask if they knew when it was purchased. And then he took out his iPhone and without pressing a button started to talk on it. I was like, I can clearly see the home screen with no call happening. When he got off the phone, I got a little bold and in my best retail manager voice said something to the effect of, "Oh, that's cool. Is that the new update where you can talk to someone without actually calling them?" He left after that. Story 14. Cell phone and entertainment business here. I'm used to having people verbally take their frustrations out on me, as if I'm the direct reason for their inconvenience. That's not even a problem anymore. What is a problem is this incident. Customer. And the company can suck my dick. Me. I'm sorry you feel that way, sir. Customer. No, really. They can suck my dick. Proceeds to unzip pants. Me. Sir, please do not. Dick comes out. Me. Great. Now I have to call the cops. Customer repeating. Suck my dick, company. Over and over again. Cops show up and now the guy is a registered offender. The problem that caused all of this? He apparently wasn't informed of an activation fee for upgrading his cell phone. A $30 fee just caused you to have a rough rest of your existence. Congrats? Some people's kids. So outside of this just being highly immature, it really does highlight how when people are seeing red and they're angry, they don't think about what they're doing and then what consequences will come of that. You're talking a $30 fee that you have to pay to upgrade your phone, and instead you do something that now gets you on the registry. Way to go, buddy. Story 15. He got in my face physically to intimidate me. When I didn't back down, he resorted to telling me I'm fat and unpleasant, all because he wanted a free replacement of a 15-year-old item that he'd used to hell and back. Thing is, if he'd be a normal effing human and not put his Weasley effing face-kissing distance from mine while yelling and spraying his spittle everywhere, I'd work something out for him. Instead, he has a lifelong ban from my whole ass company. Like, what made him think he could run up on me? Like, that would work out for him in some way. I don't know how I had the strength not to hit him. Story 16. This tale takes place roughly 22 years ago at a community college bookstore. As with any college bookstore, the start of the semesters were incredibly busy. In order to help ease the insanity in our small store, we set up a table outside the front door for doing returns. And that's where I was stationed for the day. People got in line. They got to me. I processed the paperwork for their return and sent them inside for the cashiers. This is an important point. I had no cash, no ability to process cards. Just me, a table, stack of paper, and some pens. That's it. Well, a middle-aged lady gets to me. She's obviously not lacking in funds. Her son has dropped all his classes and she's returning his books. Okay, cool. I do all the paperwork, hand her back the document, and direct her inside. And she goes ballistic that she has to wait in line again. I mean, starting nuclear wars ballistic. The customers in line behind her actually went to my manager to file formal statements about her behavior. Not mine, hers, because they knew. I take a break and shake it off. Everyone has bad days. And I know that I have the customer statements to back me up. A few days pass and the manager gets a call. It's the president of the college. With a complaint, the woman called the president of the college to complain about me. So my manager and I head off to a meeting with the president and the woman. We walked in calm and polite. The woman tells her side, still screaming and cursing. My manager pulls out the statements and, without a word, hands them to the president. The president calmly read them. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I do remember watching the woman turn more and more red. I do remember the word entitled used a whole lot, and I do remember him saying, "Don't waste my time ever again," before he showed her the door. Story 17. The one that jumps out to me was when a customer was trying to return a wall mount that was 6 months out of policy. He was being snide and verbally abusive to the customer service rep, saying things like, "I know you can do this. I return crap out of policy all the time." Or, "Well, if you weren't so stupid, this would be done by now." He ended up making her start to cry when he said, "Jesus Christ, are you retarded?" Well, she worked with special needs kids as a volunteer, and this pushed her over the edge. I walked over to him and told her to go into the back and asked him why he thinks it's okay to talk like that. I'm guessing since I'm a male and a manager, he decided to be respectful. I was pissed off beyond belief at how he'd make her cry though, so I cut off his explanations and told him to get out. He said, "Now hold on, let's all calm down." And I grabbed my radio piece and told my security to go ahead and get the police on the way down there for someone trespassing. He left so fast at that comment that he forgot his wall mount. Dick. Story 18. I worked in a bakery decorating cakes. There were 2 decorators, me and a Muslim girl. One day, a lady came in and wanted a cake decorated. I was already working on 2 cakes, so my coworker was going to do it. The woman flipped out and said that she would never let a Muslim touch her cake, and she begged me to do it. Now, I'm not the most timid person ever, but I told her to get the F out, and it felt so good. Story 19. I had a customer who used a racial slur to describe one of my employees for no other reason beyond the fact that he saw them and was offended that, quote, one of them was doing their job by doing the oil change that he came to us to do. I told him to apologize to my employee or we will push his car right out of the bay without oil. He refused, and we did just that. Told him he's more than welcome to buy his own oil and finish his oil change himself, and that he will be charged double for all services here on out if he comes into my store. I had no problem telling this racist jackass to go F himself. Story 20. Client who came to the spa at the hotel I worked at. Now, the description desk was low to the ground, so that clients stand at it. The staff were lower to the ground. I'm tall and at the time wore heels to work, so let's say I stood 6'2". All clients who book into the hotel are advised to make appointments in the spa. It's small, so we book up fast. Enter EC, entitled idiot. Wanted 2 2-hour massages the next day. Well, I didn't have that, but I knew a couple therapists would work earlier, so I offered 2 45-minute ones. EC lost his crap, leaning over, yelling at me, swearing, and generally making a scene. After attempting to defuse him, I had enough and stood up. He came up to my shoulder. I told him to turn around and get out of the spa, and for the rest of his trip, he was not welcome. He left while continuing the verbal abuse. Next day, he came into the spa, before my shift, and attempted to pull the same crap. Needless to say, he didn't get very far. Story 21. I worked in a big box home improvement store for about 3 years. I worked my way up to a sales position that was pretty high up. I got the job because everyone knew I could take a lot of crap to make a sale. But even I had a line. I got assigned to oversee another salesman's install because he had passed away due to a heart attack while at the customer's home. I had been briefly involved in the beginning for some advice from the other salesman, so naturally it got pawned off on me. I did some research on the customer. A quick Google search was all I needed. And turns out he was a pretty creepy dude. He had lured women with a high-end job in his natural oil company and basically extorted them for nudes. I figured I'd just get the install finished and be done with him. But of course things never work out that smooth with guys like this. Right off the bat, he was crap-talking the salesman that had passed away. I had to, multiple times, ask him to stop. He was always making up bullcrap stories and damaging the product we had already installed to get discounts. And that was just the beginning. Fast forward about a month later, and the majority of his install is finished. Due to some vendor issues, some of the product had arrived wrong. So I scheduled a second install date and got the product fast-tracked. Customer then proceeded to decide that he was going to remodel his home and screw up almost everything we had already installed and blame everything on us. I made multiple phone calls daily to try to communicate with him and resolve the issue, but he would never answer my phone calls and would always call the store manager later and complain. Everyone at the store knew the stupid game he was playing and never let him get anywhere. Anyways, during this period, I got offered a better job elsewhere. I gladly took it and moved on. and left the store to deal with this demon of a man. A few weeks later, I came to visit my coworker, and sure enough, the customer was sitting at her desk, berating her about the same bullcrap that he spewed at me while I worked with him. As soon as he saw me, he came over and started to get in my face. He apparently didn't listen to my voicemail, letting him know I was no longer working for said store. I said something along the lines of, "You need to relax. I no longer work here and am not obligated to take your harassment." He made some snooty remark about that it was a good thing and he knew I got fired when I stopped calling him. I responded with, "Get off your effing high horse and be a decent human being. This whole mess is your fault. I didn't even want to work with you in the first place. I know you're a effing pervert and everyone here working with you does too." He stood there and his mouth dropped. I just walked away and left the store. My old manager called me later that day and said that customer threw a fit after I left and said he was never coming back. Not gonna lie, it felt pretty great to be able to get back in the guy's face. Not many people get the chance without repercussions. Story 22. I'm Canadian. We had a new employee. The customer called the store, asked how much a product would be if we ordered it. He quoted a product in US dollars instead of Canadian dollars by mistake. She came in, demanding we sell her the product for the amount quoted on the phone. We would have lost money by selling it at that price. I tried to explain this to her. I'm here trying to support a local business. You're not supporting local businesses by stealing money. If we had sold her that product, we would have made negative $200. It still amazes me how few people understand how retail works. Like, people who buy a $2,000 TV, we didn't make $2,000 when we sold you that TV. We made $200. Samsung made $1,800. Buying that TV supported the salary of one employee for one shift. You can't come back 4 years later and demand special treatment like you handed us $2,000 and we all went out and bought new coats. Edit. Since there are people defending this lady, we did what we could to accommodate people. We offered the product in Canadian dollars with zero margin, with no profit or loss to the company. She would have received the product at a lower price than any other business in the country, but she demanded we honor the telephone price. At this point, a good employee will not buckle. I'm here and I'm paid to make the company more money than I am paid. This customer was unreasonable, loud, and demoralizing one of our employees on his first day. This is not acceptable. I had never seen this customer before nor since, and I'm happy to have lost their business to protect the company's interest and the well-being of our people. Story 23. When they try a quick change scam, here's how it works. There are many variations on it. It happened to me once. After the transaction, something didn't feel right about it, so I called my supervisor. We reviewed the security footage, and I was in fact taken for $20. The guy came back 2 weeks later and tried it again with another employee, and she was tricked as well. He came by a third time, and his trick didn't work since we were all wise to it now. The owners and my supervisor immediately rushed downstairs and chased the guy for a couple of blocks. I don't know, why do you just run this guy out of the store? Why not call the police? Get this guy investigated for fraud. He's scamming people. Come on. All he's going to do is find another store and pull the same stunt. So yeah, let's try to shut this guy down. Story 24. I was counting my till and a customer waiting in line for the other register started laughing and saying random numbers rapid fire to mess up my count. She succeeded. This was like a mid-40s lady. I sighed and looked at her and said, "What are we, 5?" And then took my till around the corner to start again. Seriously rage-inducing. Like, why would you do that? It's just being a total jerk. No redeeming humor value at all. Story 25. Own my own restaurant. I'd kick people out weekly. I want a burger combo and a Coke. Okay, burger combo and medium Coke, $4.33. It says $2.85. Yep, $2.85 for the burger and fries. Medium Coke is $1.25. Tax is 23 cents. Total is $4.33. The drink comes with the meal? No, it does not. We've got a lot better things than soda instead, so it's just burger and fries. Ever had a chocolate phosphate? Soda comes with the meal. Let me talk to your manager. Turn to my left 180 degrees. Turn to my right 180 degrees. Hi, I'm the manager. Soda doesn't come with the meal. I don't believe you. You're lying. It's nice you don't believe me. I'm not lying. Would you prefer to talk to the owner? Fair warning, guy's a bit of a dick. Don't talk to me like that. Give me the owner right away. Turns 360 in place. Get the F out of my store. Story 26. I had a customer threaten to call the cops because I wouldn't give them 50% off of a charity bear on Boxing Day. 100% of the proceeds from these teddy bears went to the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and they were only $15. The store had a 50% off everything sale for Boxing Day, but it didn't include the charity bears. I had capital letters because it's a charity bear. Its purpose is right in the name. I basically kept saying, "Ma'am, it's a charity bear," because I didn't know how else to explain that the point of the bear was to raise money. That seemed obvious. People in line were starting to get really upset with her, and she just started to freak right out and was starting to dial 911. My boss, so upset, she lost a son early in life to cancer, so Make-A-Wish was important to her, just gave her a bear and told her to never come back. A bunch of familiar customers of ours were so upset they pitched in the $15 without us even saying anything, which was super kind of them. It was a restoration of faith in humanity, but what a nightmare for no reason, especially on Boxing Day. Story 27. I used to work at a gas station. My first shift, this large man comes in and starts yelling for some reason, and my manager on duty ejects him from the store, and the man is hollering that he's never going to buy gas from the company again. A different time, this small lady was mad that we wouldn't accept a return without a receipt. Theft was a major problem, and the company wouldn't accept returns without a receipt over $10 when it used to be $25. So this lady decided to grab the register and throw it at us working at the counter. Police got involved in that one. Story 28. Supervisor in a coffee joint in the mall on the first Saturday after Christmas. We just gotten a new manager who was a recent hire, and she pretty much chased all of the old guard off with her newfound lust for power and replaced them with the most apathetic teenagers she could find. We were incredibly busy, and although we were technically fully staffed, these were all kids who didn't know what they were doing, partly because they didn't want to put in the effort learning, partly because of our manager's idea of training around the holidays was a joke. And I needed a effing break. About 3 minutes into me downing a desperately needed glass of water and a handful of almonds so I could get back to it, one of the 16-year-old aspiring SoundCloud rappers pokes his head back and says, "Bro, this dude wants to talk to you." My return message of, "I'll be out there in a couple of minutes, I'm on a break," was met with a concerning, "He said he doesn't care." I wait a couple more minutes before I go back out there, and as soon as I'm out of the swinging door to the back, there's a 40-something-year-old couple clutching blended coffee drinks, 2 small dogs in a Victorian-looking bassinet, and a demand to know who the hell I think I am taking a break like that. "I'm sorry, sir, but I needed water and I needed food. I needed a minute." "You're a terrible manager. Your employees are hopeless. This took forever." Various other sentences that ended in a capitalized adjective. "Sir, these are new hires. It's the holiday season. I'm absolutely not the manager, just a supervisor, and we're doing our best." And then he said it. I remember it verbatim because it was one of the last straws that got me to leave that dead-end job. F you and F your best. Well, there goes, sir. You got your drinks. The only reason you're still here is to jump down my throat, which is keeping me from keeping all these other people from having their orders backed up. So get out now. 2 weeks later, I got out too. Story 29. I worked at a barbecue restaurant for my first job. We had a takeout area where the customer can watch you cut the meat and pack the side dishes. The girl at the register rang up a quart of potato salad when the customer asked for pasta salad, so I packed potato salad. When the customer received his order, he looked through and flipped crap when he saw potato salad and started screaming at me, "Go figure." Unbeknownst to all of us, the owner of the store heard the commotion and was on the other side of the swing door behind me, which had a small window. The angry customer decided to throw a quart of potato salad at me, which I ducked to avoid. It splattered against the window on the swing door as the owner was looking out of it. He burst through the door. He's 6'4" and very built. Grabbed this scrawny dude by his shirt collar, and he had straight fear in his eyes. My boss literally threw him out the door. Went back to the register to ask the girl what his total was. Grabbed the cash and tossed it out the door at the angry customer as he was collecting himself off the ground. It was an awesome scene. 3 words. Justice is served. Story 30. Worked at Radio Shack for 6 months while in college. Pretty much had at least one terrible experience per shift. The one that stands out the most was a guy who wanted us to honor the warranty on his iPhone cable. The thing was a mutilated mess. It had clearly stopped working, and he tried to fix it himself by cutting the cable apart and attempting to solder 2 wires together. We calmly explained that we couldn't process a claim for an item that was willfully destroyed, and he starts screaming in our faces about how Radio Shack is a scam, and "I'm going to sue all of you." And then he tries to whip My coworker, a 5-foot-tall, non-threatening woman, with the cable. She managed to turn her head and catch the wire with her hand before it caught her in the face. Myself and another employee chased him out of the store and called the police, but nothing came of it. Radio Shack shoppers are the worst. No, not Radio Shack shoppers. Shoppers in general are the worst. Like, if you're trying to whip somebody with a cable, that's assault. That's assault at the very least. That needs to be a criminal offense that goes on her permanent record. Totally unacceptable. And again, like, over what? Over what? Ridiculous. Story 31. I had just started working at an exchange store that only buys and sells tech. While still learning the ropes, I bought a laptop off of a customer and tested it, then after purchase did a factory reset. About 2 weeks later, a guy comes in and buys said laptop. Good business, no problem. The next day, the customer comes in raging, saying there is child adult content and violent SA/snuff adult content on the laptop, and he bought it for his teenage daughter who found the files. Crap starts hitting the fan, and he's threatening to go to the police and local news unless he's compensated for the incident. I'm panicking because my boss is saying if it goes through, I will be dismissed, as he's trying to type an email to the higher-ups about the incident. I'm confused because I know for a fact I checked the files and there was no media on there of that sort. On top of the fact, I completely factory reset the laptop and installed a new OS. So on my break, I take the laptop downstairs to the break area and start investigating. To my surprise, it isn't that hard to find out when a file was modified or put onto the laptop and find out that the horrible adult content on the laptop was put on the day prior. Not only that the files were inside a folder on the desktop, and the folder was named Adult Content. And I'm not so incompetent to have not seen that when testing it before I bought it, so I mentioned it to my boss. The next day, the guy walks back into the shop with 2 guys from the local paper, threatening to tell them everything if he isn't aptly compensated. Ironically, we have the police waiting for him, and he's arrested for the possession of child adult content. And to add to that, we had 2 local reporters, so he kindly dragged along with them to get the scoop on this disgusting con man. Turns out he didn't have a daughter and was put on the sex offender list. I didn't look into if he did jail time, but Jesus Christ. All I was thinking when the police was taking him away is how much I wanted to just shout as much obscene crap at him as he was leaving the store. Story 32. Building material store. B2B, so not much retail, I guess. Guy comes in with his son. Wants to buy a 2K air tool. I pretty quickly recognize he's going to attempt check/card fraud. Not a big deal. We get tried 2 to 3 times a week for the same thing. But this guy wasn't very good at it. He hands me a crap-looking card. Tests the chip and doesn't work. I can key the numbers and process the sale if I want. So I know for sure now it's fraud, but I never accuse him, so I ask for cash. Most fraudsters can read my face and understand I know what they're doing. Usually, they say they will go to the bank real quick and then they get lost. This guy starts getting aggressive. I'm fed up, so I look at his son. I ask him what his name is. Juan. Then I say, Juan, when you grow up, you don't want to be stealing crap like your daddy, and sucking at it too. Oh boy. Story 33. I had been a third key for a well-hated but national video game store chain for almost 2 years when I finally had the opportunity to tell someone to get the F out. A little background. It was coming up to the release of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and the back stock of the last generation of systems was getting quite large company-wide, so a sale was being run on the systems. In addition, a free second pre-owned controller was being included. The district manager had decided, and mandated, that it was a good idea to put stacks of boxes of live systems out on the floor to show that sale was going on. A gentleman had come in and was poking around the store. I greeted him to acknowledge that he was noticed, and I was ready to help him. Immediately, he started acting suspicious by testing the doors of cabinets, checking accessories if they were indeed locked, and he pushed an empty display box for one of the Xbox Ones with his foot to see if there was anything in it. Another gentleman had come in and asked for a PlayStation 3 and a handful of games. I turned my back to grab the games out of the behind POS drawers, and when I turned back around, about 45 seconds later, I noticed that a stack of Xbox 360s had suddenly gotten one shorter and had cut tape where the system used to be. Being the only person in the store, relatively later in the evening, I exclaimed, "Oh crap, as I noticed the suspicious guy from before had disappeared. Bowing my head in defeat that I wasn't able to protect my product from theft, and that I would be hearing about it the next day from my manager, I headed towards the storeroom to grab a system for the paying customer. I was suddenly greeted by the sound of squeaking styrofoam against cardboard from behind a display shelf full of Nintendo Wii games. As I turned to my right, I witnessed the sketchball of a man on his knees with a black Xbox 360 stuffed halfway in his backpack. Completely bewildered to why this dumbass hadn't just dipped out of the store after grabbing the system, I finally remembered that this idiot was trying to steal my crap, and I walked over to him and said, "What in the hell are you doing?" Suddenly, the man turned up and looked at me like a dog crapping on the floor, and getting caught, he decided to tell me, "It said it had 2 controllers, so I was just making sure that it was in the box." With a dumbfounded look on my face, I pointed to the door and said the awaited words, "Get the F out of my store," and watched as the scumbag pulled the Xbox out of his backpack and sprinted out of the store before I had the chance to call security. Story 34. I worked in a college bookstore years ago, and this guy came in and I greeted him. He then turned around and I saw he had a bag on him, and store policy was to have customers leave bags up front, so I politely said, "Oh, we don't really show bags in the store. Could you please leave it in the cubbies?" He then got upset and started loudly saying, "I have my computer in here. I can't leave it here." We normally would put things like that behind the counter, so I offered him that choice, and he started flipping out like crazy. By this time, the store manager came out and asked what all the yelling was about, and the customer started to berate both me and the manager about how crazy it was that he couldn't keep his bag on him. My manager was known to not take crap from anyone, so after his rant, she just told him, "If you don't like our policies, just get the F out." She will probably be my favorite of all time. Story 35. Not my story, but my brother's. He works the gun counter at a popular outdoor store and is now able to easily spot sketchy characters. He had a group of 3 early 20s gangbanger guys come up, and GB1 asked for 3 identical style handguns, red flag number 1, and he already knows he probably will refuse to sell them. Bro says, "Sure, I just need a valid driver's license." GB1 hands him an expired state ID, so Bro tells him, "Sorry, I can't sell you any guns, this is expired, and not a driver's license." All 3 immediately start berating him about how he's a racist piece of crap. They were black, he's very white, and asking to see the manager. Bro says, "Sure, let me go get her." Brings back his manager, who happens to be a young black woman. They were huddled on the far side of the large store, so Bro just told manager what they were trying to do. She told him not to sell them anything at all and went about her business. 10 minutes after, they send over GB2 to try and give his valid license. Bro declines to even take it, and the other 2 come over to start yelling at him again while he just walks away. They disappear until about 30 minutes before closing, and Bro grabs manager as he sees them coming back up. They immediately aim for her, and GB3 tries to hand over his license, and beautiful, wonderful manager literally just yells in his face, "My employee told you no, now turn the F around and get the hell out of my store." Story 36. I worked at a head shop here in Canada. The environment is a bit different, but still retail nonetheless. One is people asking for weed hookups. Yes, it's legal, but not for me to sell it to you, and I wouldn't hook up a random anyways, so I gotta tell them F off. Number 2 is the worst though. Goddamn crack and meth heads in the DT area. This one female dog used to come in so effed off her rocker and would scream to herself in the shop and scare other people and customers off. I asked her to leave multiple times until she said, "What are you actually gonna do?" That's not a question to ask a 6'7", 230-pound dude who is not in the mood. So I dragged her damn ass out and pitched her onto the sidewalk. Story 37. I worked at Aldi and I was on the register because we were busy. Usually we only have one person on the register. So the other girl is ringing on the one behind me, and I start hearing her customer laugh and heckle her, and they were going back and forth, and he's getting more and more vulgar and starts yelling. By this time, I'm done with my last person. So I get up and turn around and ask them if I can help him, and he starts mouthing off and yelling at me, and I start telling him to leave, and he starts knocking things off the shelves and yelling the whole time. I'm just repeating, "Okay, bye, leave, bye, get out, go leave." As soon as my 6'4" manager got to the front, he shut the hell up and walked out the door. I guess what had happened was the guy tried to hit on the other cashier, and when she told him she was married, he lost his crap and started calling her ugly and a skank and everything else he could think of. I was told by the manager that I can't kick people out of the store if I wasn't the manager on duty. I was a shift leader, but at the time, he was MOD, so technically I should have called him to handle the situation. Story 38. I used to work for Quick Lube in Alaska for a boss named John, who was a decent manager and enjoyed handling customers. He was professional and kind and knowledgeable, but loved to tell the couple stories of customers he told off. The coldest move was a customer who was berating him. Customer reached out and stuffed a business card into John's shirt pocket, demanding to see the boss right now. John said he took the card back out, shoved it in that guy's pocket, and said, "The buck stops here. Get the F out of my shop." I've carried that as a reminder that professionals take crap as part of their job, but nobody should take too much. Story 39. I know this is going to sound like a "and then everyone clapped" moment, but you've got to believe me, I live this. An old couple was berating me for not instantly having their entire order scanned and bagged on the welfare day, in peak hours. Of course, management has conveniently gone AWOL during this. I was about to start crying because these female dogs were just tearing at everything about me when this middle-aged lady from another checkout lane gets in their faces and starts screaming at them. She called them disgusting and told them to leave me the F alone. They tried to defend themselves, but she was having none of it. Eventually, he told them to effing leave. They left in a huff, scoffing about how rude the younger generations are and how they never. The lady told me she worked in retail and won't put up with that crap. A little bit of humanity was restored to me that day. Story 40. I work for a storage company, and our policy for customers is once they're 2 weeks past due on rent, we put one of our locks on their unit. This one lady, whose name I will remember until the end of days, would climb over the fence and damaged it in multiple spots because she was 300 plus pounds, sneak into the building and break open the door so she could sleep in her unit, even though she lived in the apartments across the street. The first time she did it, she didn't even bother putting her lock on the unit when she was done. So we replaced the hasp and put 2 locks on it. I even stayed late to tell her when she tried to climb the fence that if she did it again, we were going to call the police on her for trespassing and destruction of property. Surprise, surprise. As soon as I left, she did it again. I show up the next morning and she's passed out naked in her unit, with the door completely ripped off the tracks. It was a roll-up door, with the hasp cut out of it with an angle grinder. I go to the office and call the police, with her running up to the office, still naked, banging on the door saying she's going to kill me if I'm on the phone with the police. Decided customer service didn't matter at this point and told her to F off since the police were on their way. Instead of her going back to the unit to put her clothes on and be arrested with dignity, she tries to climb the fence naked. Finally gets over as the cops show up and attempted to run away. So let's see here. Multiple counts of trespassing, since we had it all on our security cameras, damage to private property, incident exposure, evading arrest, SA for threatening me, and when the cops went with me to her unit, they found a F ton of cocaine and heroin. So, possession with intent to distribute. Story 41. A woman came in looking for a whole new wardrobe at Banana Republic. She said she was on the run from the Hells Angels and that the cops were trying to kill her. She was trans, so I'm sure some of her fear was justified, but she was super paranoid looking around the store and asked me to stay by her side in case they were here. After a while, I said I had to get back to work, and she grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go. Luckily, a manager saw this and barked at her to leave. She tried to take me with her as protection, but luckily my manager came and wrestled me out of her vice grip. Security had already been called, so they got her out of the store. I felt super bad for her, but I had no experience dealing with mentally ill people, so I just kept going with my day. Then, about an hour after she leaves, I notice she's standing outside the store window just watching me. Cops were called, and they came and took her without incident. I hope she got some help and is doing better now, but it was all super bizarre to a 16-year-old. ETA, I only mentioned that she was trans because I was saying she was a vulnerable person in the first place. I absolutely did not mean to imply a generalization about trans people, and I'm sorry that I was careless. Story 42. Was a supervisor in a store where people would trade in goods for other secondhand stuff. One guy stands out, and I had a lot of imbeciles I dealt with over my 7 years there. This guy had previously bought a phone from us and came back demanding we give him his money back for a new phone as the one we sold him had a crack. As it's secondhand, we may have missed a hairline crack during our testing, no biggie, so we swapped it. Thought that was the end. About a month later, he's the first customer of the day, and he's cussing us out because his phone isn't working. He has a warranty, so we take the phone, open up the casing, and what do we see? The phone is water damaged. 100% not how we would have sold it, since that's the first thing checked during a test. We tell him his warranty is void. Him and his wife freak out and start shouting, saying they'll stay there all day and tell others not to shop with us. I'm like, you're wasting your time. At least I'm paid to be here. Obviously, doesn't like that, but he also slips up by saying, if I'd have known it was water damage, don't you think I would have pulled the sticker off so you guys wouldn't notice? Guy straight up confirms he's a fraud. Keeps demanding his money back. At this point, I call center security, tell him what's up. They come in and say he has to leave. He's like, this is a public place. I decide to chime in and state that this is private property, he's banned, and he can GTFO. Guy won't leave when security demanded it, so they get on the radio to the cops, as the guy is now technically trespassing. His dumb harpy of a wife screeches at him, and they both hightail it out, all before I'd had my morning tea. Story 43. Back when I was an undergrad, I worked part-time at a Macy's. One day, I get this customer who says he's looking for a sports jacket that he saw listed on the website, and he wanted to buy it at the store. I told him, no problem. Let me check and see if we have it. So I check on my computer and nope, we don't have any in stock. So I tell him that I can just place an order and he can pick it up in a few days. No, I'm going to be out of town. So I told him that we can have it shipped directly to him. No, I want it today. I told him that I can check and see if another Macy's had it. I already drove all the way here. I told him, well, you saw it online, right? Why not order it from the website? Apparently that set him off, and he said, I really don't like your smart-ass tone right now. I just give him a WTF look and said, sir, I'm trying to help you, and you're not helping me by literally rejecting every option we have. Why not try buying something similar? No, I want that one. I bet your manager can get me what I want. He's going to tell you the same thing I just told you. Oh, we'll see about that. You'll be lucky if you have a job left after this, blah, 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 blah. I really didn't pay attention to his ranting as I was calling the manager and giving the guy the middle finger with my eyes. So when my manager gets down to where I am, he looks at the guy and just says, oh, it's you. Do I need to call security again? I had such a big crap-eating grin on my face. A-hole customer starts screaming at both of us and says, this is bullcrap. I'm going to report both of you to corporate. I just start laughing and say, dude, didn't he just tell you to get the F out? Apparently he wasn't expecting that and just stared at us. My boss is trying to keep a straight face at this point and says, well, you heard him. Get the F out. Story 44. Colleague was cleaning the front of the fish tanks. Pet shop, and one of them had this weird stuff on it that smeared as she wiped it. Ask me what the hell is this? It wasn't there when I was catching fish about 10 minutes ago. I have this awful realization. I go check the CCTV and sure enough, I see what I knew I would see, even though I was really hoping not to. A guy jacking it onto the fish tank. WTF. I recognized him as he was hanging around earlier. Worse, I had to clean this up myself, as no way did my young minimum wage colleague deserve to deal with that. Needless to say, next time he showed his face, I banned him from the store right there and then. My voice was a little loud. Shudder. Again, that's a crime. Indecent exposure. You need to call the police. Don't just ban him from the store if he's jerking it into a fish tank. Story 45. I used to work in comic books. Had this older guy come in with a box of assorted 90s comics. All crap. He's got about 30 of them. They're all going into my dollar bin. Normally it's 10 cents a book, but I figured I'd be nice, so I said $5 for the collection. He gets upset because his comics are worth millions apparently. So I told him straight up, you're welcome to keep them if you like, but they're going right into my dollar bin, so I'm not going to pay you more. For reference, I'm a mid-20s woman working alone in a small store. He's a 60-something grumpy old man. This also takes place in Canada. He finally agrees, but then says, if I come back and see these books on the shelf for more, I'm going to get my gun and shoot at you. At this point, I drop his box back on the counter and step away and said, did you just threaten to kill me? Get out. I'm not buying your comics anymore. He tries to play it off like he's joking, but I stood my ground and told him to get the F out and that he had threatened my life over $5. Then I closed the store and cried for a while. What kind of a-hole do you have to be? Story 46. I managed a hobby shop where half the shop was dedicated to tabletop games. We'd have the usual neckbeards come in and play D&D or Warhammer. A particular bunch smelled pretty horrible. The same 3 guys smelled like unwashed ball sack and old cheese. They had been warned a couple times, but this particular day I was hungover and just got fed up with the smell, so I politely asked them to leave. They decided to argue, so I threw my hands up and said that if they didn't go home and take a shower, I'd kick them out. One of them decided to call me Hitler, so I banned them all forever. About once a week they'd walk in thinking I'd forgot, so I had to remind them that they were permanently banned from the store. Multiple times. Story 47. I work at a movie theater. There were 4 preteen boys who were causing trouble. Sneaking into movies, one wouldn't put a shirt on, and they took an empty popcorn container and went to me for a refill as I was closing the popcorn counter. They've been asked to leave multiple times. Give me a refill. I'm not giving you a refill tonight. Why not? You were asked to leave here already. I'm not going to give you any popcorn. Just give me the popcorn. No. He looked at me and chucked the popcorn container at me. I looked at him and screamed in my most convincing angry mom voice, "Don't throw things at me and get out of here right now!" It got the attention of the other manager, who was able to call security to escort them out. Story 48. I worked at a men's formal wear store. This woman tried to return a fleece blanket. Being a formal wear store, you see we didn't sell effing blankets. On top of that, the blanket was ratty looking as hell and obviously didn't have a receipt, so I told her there was nothing I could do for her. She goes nuclear. We had a signal where under the counter line, if we twirled our pointer finger, like you would do next to your ear to say this person's crazy, it basically meant there's no use trying to smooth this over, this person just sucks. Just literally screeching over me, not taking a blanket that looks like it belonged to a homeless person in a store that doesn't sell blankets. My manager told her to leave or he would call security. Story 49. Broke a large light bulb on the floor near the door, and as I was cleaning, customer comes in barefoot. "Sorry sir, just broke some glass in here. How about telling me what you need or coming back in a minute with shoes?" "I don't care. You workers are all huge pussies these days. I worked in a nail factory barefoot, blah blah blah," as he continues to walk closer. "Did you really just override my request and expect to be served?" Insert more disrespect. Cue register lock. Come around and hold the door open to leave. GTFO, but in nicer terms. How convenient that when there's broken glass on the floor, someone happens to walk in barefoot. I don't know too many people that just walk around barefoot in convenience stores, but even more so when there's broken glass on the floor. This seems a little contrived. Story 50. I work in a cinema in the UK. Got called out to check a kid's age as they didn't look old enough for a 15 rated film. Straight away, parents are on edge. Parents are the worst for ID checks. They'll swear the sky is purple to get their precious kid into effing Deadpool. "Well, he does look young, has the ID. Do you want to see his dick?" "Why would you say that?" was my first reaction. "No, sir, I don't want to see your kid's dick, even if he is 15. I asked him and his entire family to leave. He came back and apologized. Story 51. I worked at a gym many years ago, and we had special needs folks come in 3 times a week to clean equipment. They always had fun and got to swim in the pool after they finished, and they loved coming into work. I was with a customer who wanted to buy a membership, and the bus that brought the special needs folks was just then dropping them off. The customer I was taking on a gym tour was side-eyeing them, but not saying anything about it. When we went back to my office to talk pricing, she says, "I just don't know how people can let folks like them into a place like this to clean. They're doing a horrible job. It's just disgusting. They shouldn't be out in public." I stood up and said, "Time for you to go. I'm serious. Get the F out." She gave me this look like, how dare I talk to her like that, and sputtered, "I was going to buy a membership for my whole family. You're losing out on a big commission because you want to be a bleeding heart?" I said, "Don't talk, just effing leave. We're way better off without someone like you here, and don't worry about my commission. I'll make it up on a better class of human. Seriously, get the F out." She went to my boss and complained, and he said, "Why are you still here?" He said, "Get the F out." Get the F out. Turns out he had been in the next office over, we had thin walls, and had caught what she had said. She got the F out. Still makes my blood boil 22 years later. Story 52. Worked for AutoZone commercial and would occasionally take overnight shifts at the 24-hour store, partly for hours and partly because they brought breakfast. At about 2 a.m., a guy comes in to get a warranty refund on a pair of brake pads, but seemed like he was in a hurry. He even put the box over the return cart for me, even though I had to open the box to tag the pads. Inside the box is old crap. Literal human crap, by my guess. Out loud, I say, "What the F? Come on, man," as a manager came over to probably apologize for my language. The stream of cursing still makes me laugh over a decade later, and the manager chased him out and threw the box at his vehicle. The police were called. The customer was banned, and we had a great breakfast a few hours later. Story 53. To be fair, I rarely get to overtly and openly tell a customer to get the F out, as it's a fine line between taking crap diplomatically and letting them know it's not okay, because I could kill you right easily right now. Once they've crossed the line with swearing, it's my get out clause, and it usually goes down like this. It's quite a formal environment, and though I'm not going to swear back at them, quoting them is just as effective. "I'm sorry you feel my colleague is effing stupid," said with equal malice, "but there's no need to be derogatory or talk to anyone like that. If they step out of line again, let me stop you there. You keep talking to me like that, then I ain't, and none of my team ain't gonna serve you, and I'll be asking you to leave." It's the really bad use of English and using the ain't, but it's a colloquial hint. Story 54. A guy asks me for a shoe, and I go to the back to grab it, but we don't have the size he's looking for. I tell him there's only one size left, and it's the display shoe, half a size smaller, that he's holding in his hand. I ask him if he wants it. He says no and thanks me for my help. I nod, give him space, and walk to the register to help others. As I was working the register, my coworker is helping a couple and brings out that shoe. I don't know this. When I'm done at the register, the guy comes up to me a few minutes later and says he does want the shoe. So I go to the back and check, but it's not there. It's with the couple. I walk out and tell him that someone else is trying it on, and if he wants it, he's got to wait and see if the couple will take them or not. Couple decides they want the shoe, but the guy won't give up the display shoe he's holding onto. They start arguing back and forth over a shoe that's been sitting there for months. My manager comes in to resolve it and get both sides. This was where the original guy says that he had told me he wanted them from the start. Told my manager he was lying, and we told him to leave and that he was leaving without crap. He left angry, saying he'd call corporate. Gotta love retail. Story 55. I was at the counter helping a dude, and a pretty girl that I worked with walked behind the counter to get some go-backs and bent over to pick them up. He commented to me that she had the kind of ass that would make a man keep going, even if she was sobbing and saying no. That made me uncomfortable, but she didn't hear it, and it could have been a bad/tasteless joke. I finished up with the dude. I was just consulting for another employee, and walked back to my station close by. As the girl walked past him, he grabbed her arm and told her not to leave as he wasn't done looking at her yet. She tried to just kind of smile and walk away, but he didn't let go, and moved her so she was up against the counter and he was way too close to her. I flagged down a manager who told him to leave. He refused, so the manager said he'd call the cops if he didn't. Dude pieced out real quick, and my manager got his plate number. Not sure what happened after that. I don't know if my manager called it in or not. I wasn't close with the girl, and didn't talk to her about it after. I never told her what the dude said, and I doubt she knows I was who called the manager. She was understandably shaken up and ended up going home shortly after. The manager had her wait for a bit after the dude left and walked her to her car just to be sure. Story 56. So I see a sweet old man looking through the syrups. I can tell he's looking for a specific kind, so I ask if he needs help. The man politely tells me he's looking for the sugar-free. Okay, no big deal. Here it is, sir. The man thanks me and talks to me about his diet for a minute. Just normal, lonely old people talk. Then a mom and her 2 daughters walk past, and I see the man look at them, then down towards the daughters. They were probably 5 or 6, and the old man makes a remark that I didn't fully catch, other than the words, little butts. I see him looking at them and back at me, and he just smiles and walks on. I was legit dumbfounded. Definitely got a manager on that one. Story 57. When I was working at the local McD's in the small town I lived in, we would get some sketchy people coming in. This one dirty, middle-aged guy in not-so-nice clothes came in every day for about a month, and was nothing too weird in particular, only that he would fish in our trash cans for the coffee stickers thing for a free coffee. He would come in with a coffee cup and ask for a refill, even though we never served him before that day. Usual crackhead thing, right? Well, my manager and I were working late, around 9:30ish, and he starts pouring salt in his shoes, shakes them, then pours out the salt onto the floor. Obviously, we're like, WTF. Now, my manager is my friend, and we know each other pretty well, and she's incredibly awesome at what she does. But confrontations with sketchy customers are not her thing, and she prefers to have somebody with her, preferably with someone tall, just in case. So she takes me and goes up to the guy and tells him not to do that because 1, don't take your shoes off in the lobby as with messes with sanitary rules and this guy had no socks on, and 2, he's making a mess with his now feet salt. Now, my manager is definitely in my top 5 most beautiful and nicest people I've ever met, and I assume that she gets a lot of unwanted flirtations in her life, but he proceeds to aggressively flirt with her, to bargain, and starts pulling up his shirt and unzips his pants. Needless to say, I don't think she needed me for that confrontation because she did not take that well and told him straight up, you need to leave right effing now or I'll call the police, and believe me, you do not want to deal with them today. Her father is the main sheriff. He left cussing us out while we banned him from the restaurant. Never saw him again. She gave me a free meal card as an apology for seeing her like that. I was just surprised she didn't murder the guy. No other customers came in after that, so we chilled until our shifts ended. Kelsey, you're awesome, and I miss you.